mccollum was an extremely fun prospect, and part of why his game was so cool to me, and why it's been so effective, I think, is just how synergistic all of his skills are. As CJ was obviously a ridiculous shooter, had pull up three balls from basically any kind of range he wanted. Defenses had to be high and early on pick and rolls, or CJ would just fire balls over them like that. As a lot of great shooters do, he's so good at shooting off of weird bases and weird releases. You can see CJ's legs are really really wide here, wider than shoulder length, and he kind of swoops the ball up and to the right, but he's just able to flow into that shot and knock it down beautifully. The versatility of his releases and his shot prep, while still staying balanced and knocking in shots with touch, is pretty special, I would say. And again, teams played him so high and hard that CJ could use his handle to reject these screens and pull up for wide open triples. And speaking of handle, I think that's what made CJ probably underrated by a lot of people, and maybe something that I would have underrated as well, is that his handle was so good and so functional for his skills and for his specific brand of scoring and shot making. And I'll show you what I mean. So again, defenses would blitz him high and hard because he was pulling up the second that he got an inch of breathing room behind the arc. But his handle was low and tight enough to easily split double teams like this and get all the way to the rim. He was routinely getting low on these plays and splitting these blitz, trap, hedge defenses. These defenders are afraid of CJ's range because they know CJ will pull from right here. And because of his versatile deep range shot making, he's able to punish them with his handle and make it all the way to the rim with ease on plays like that. He was so tight and shifty with his handle, able to change speeds and directions seamlessly. Again, you see CJ kind of bring his right arm to the ball as if he's going to prepare for a shot, but he instantly feigns that and crosses over for a wide open layup, getting to the other side of the rim. Just so much craft in all facets of his game, taking an extra dribble here and shielding himself from these taller defenders with the rim. And all of that coming off of the initial threat of his jumper. Part of the reason why I think his handle worked so well was his low center of gravity made him really tough to defend. He wasn't that strong or that quick or long or anything, but he played so low to the ground. His hips are hinged at 90 degrees here. Incredible angle. And he's able to stay low throughout the whole drive, which just makes him tough to wall off. And he had the touch to finish tough shots like that with both hands. I think this is a really consummate CJ McCollum play right here. Some good, some bad, and some more good, where he's able to easily shift this defender with incredible pace. And just look again, the base is so wide. We saw him shoot off of a base like this before. He's basically, his knee is almost touching the ground here. He uses great pace, going from fast to slow to fast, and is able to get in there and finish. CJ didn't really generate a lot of easy shots, which would have been a worry for me for sure. But his touch and scoring craft seem to have been special enough to not really make that matter, as this is all of the separation he needs to, hop step into a spot and finish strong off the glass with his offhand. This was something CJ routinely did. And maybe even more impressive was his handle in terms of creating space for jumpers. As that same wild change of direction and speed was so nasty when defenses had to fear his drive. He could get by him with his handle and feign this slashing opportunity and then step back for a high release jumper right in the face of the defender. Again, we see plays like this, old snatchback threes. And CJ, I do think the separation was a worry and something that I would have probably overvalued as an issue, where he really did struggle to get one-on-one separation against these not that great defenders and not that strong and athletic defenders. But he was just such a good shot maker that it never really mattered. And CJ was just so insanely efficient Just all 4 years, just unbelievable volume, free throw, long twos, all of the indicators, as we've been seeing and are going to continue seeing. His shot versatility, which I talk about all the time on this channel, was incredibly, incredibly impressive. But there were real issues, like he often got blocked or contested really easily because while he was great at altering his release to release these shots way above his head, it sometimes wasn't enough for these, really long and athletic defenders. And even when CJ was able to get off ball and use these kind of screens to free himself, when he would get into the teeth of the defense, into the paint among the trees, oftentimes his little craft and footwork wasn't enough to, scoop in these finishes. But I think there were some weird concerns surrounding CJ. I talked about his game being synergistic. His off-ball game and his shooting worked so well with his slashing, but it seemed like there was some perception that he wasn't a great off-ball player, which is just not the case. Just not the case at all. This analysis was he has a hard time impacting with the ball in his hands, but then they undervalue something like his handle here. I think placing him at 19 in this draft was crazy. But CJ was just such a gifted off-ball player. I'm going to skip this clip for a second and come back to it. I think that his off-ball game just works so well, as I've been saying, with his shooting, where he could easily come off of screens, and even if he didn't have a clear crease, a clear opening, there is a hedge here, and CJ's not able to make this pass, but he's able to reset and handle into this little decel floater. Watch how he uses the long steps and how low he is to create space and get that shot. And his passing really was a major weakness, I would say. His passing was very simple. I think this play is emblematic of his passing as a whole, where he's able to make simple little kickouts off of his gravity. But when more complex reads open up, this skip to the weak side, which isn't that tough because both of these defenders are creating a big gap, but CJ does lack the size to make passes like that and the vision as well. That was a big blind spot for his passing, and he didn't really make complex passes out of the pick and roll at all. It was mostly one pass away help stuff as well. Again, he was a dominant shooter, as we've been talking about. So when he would run off screens, defense chased hard over, and he could easily dribble into little pull-ups like this. Or if the defense wasn't respecting him and chasing as tightly as they needed to, he would just splash movement threes in their face. We're seeing more of this remarkable shot versatility on display. And the touch was so good. He was so capable of, again, defenses overplayed the hell out of him in all facets because his scoring blended so well with his shooting and his off-ball movement in this, motion offense that Lehigh often ran for him, that, he'd hit wild touch shots like this. And CJ, I think, is another example of just how important degrees are. His shooting was so crazy. His senior year where he was, only played 12 games because of the injuries, 10 threes a game, on pace for, over 200 far two attempts. There aren't a lot of guys who have done that. This is way fewer far two attempts, and a lot of these guys are incredibly dynamite shooters. And a lot of the ones that didn't work out, the small guards, had issues that CJ really didn't. Jimmer, again, we talked about in my Steph video, had a pretty weak handle. Campaign is another kind of example of this, where most of his work was kind of straight line driving, where he was a pretty quick guy, but he wasn't generating a ton of separation. A lot of his drives looked something like that, whereas he wasn't really using his handle. He doesn't have a complex handle or an ability to create consistent separation like CJ McCollum does and did. And a lot of his jumpers were open and less difficult and less varied than someone like CJ. So CJ was super fun. Again, just the combination of shot making, touch, craft, and handle was really, really special. And he was a really, really cool prospect.